Amy, let me tell you about a magical place that is so exactly designed to be enclosed space, year-round fun for the whole family that I bet you already know what I'm going to say before I even say the name. Let's say it together on 3. 1, 2, 3. Great Wolf Lodge. You got it, Amy.
My kids loved Great Wolf Lodge when we went. You probably already know that it has a huge indoor water park with a wave pool, lazy river, a bunch of massive water slides. But then your pack can hit the other attractions because, wait, there's more.
Great Wolf Lodge has adventure-packed attractions like Magi Quest, a live-action game kids can play throughout the lodge, plus the Northern Lights Arcade. Spent some quality time there, so your kid who loves the lazy river and your kid who loves fantasy games will both have a great time.
Great Wolf Lodge also offers great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. Unpack the car once and you're settled in to have fun. And with 22 lodges across the country, you're always a short drive away from adventure.
We've both had such great times at Great Wolf Lodge, so bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Learn more at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fresh Take from the What Fresh Hell podcast. This is Margaret.
And this is Amy. And today we're talking to Dr. Harold Koplewicz. He is one of the nation's leading child and adolescent psychiatrists. He's the founding president and medical director of the Child Mind Institute. He has been repeatedly named in America's top doctors, best doctors in America, and New York Magazine's best doctors in New York. And his new book is The Scaffold Effect, Raising Resilient, Self-Reliant, and Secure Kids in an Age of Anxiety. This book expertly guides parents through strategies for raising empowered, capable people by giving them the tools to flourish on their own. Harold, thanks for talking to us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Thanks for being here. That sounds good to me. Reliant and secure kids.
Sign me up. So the Child Mind Institute has been around for many years. It provides early, effective care for kids who are suffering. Can you tell us a little bit about the Institute and the work you do there?
Sure. The Child Mind Institute is the only independent nonprofit in the United States that's exclusively dedicated to transforming the lives of children who are struggling with a mental health or a learning disorder. And we started about 11 years ago and modeled it after St. Jude's Children's Hospital. So St. Jude's Children's Hospital, what's important about it is that they were laser focused on tackling pediatric leukemia, which about 60 years ago, you lost 94 out of 100 kids who got that disease. And today, only 4. The mortality rate is you still lose 4 out of 100.
Oh, I got goosebumps. That's incredible.
Right. And it was started, by the way, it's interesting, by a TV star who wanted to be a movie star, Danny Thomas. And he prayed to St. Jude, who's the saint of hopeless causes. And he said that if I can get this part in a movie, I will build a children's hospital for kids who have cancer. And he got the role. He never became a movie star. He was a very famous TV star. But he built this children's hospital and, essentially said no child should die in the dawn of their life. And today, this hospital, if you don't have insurance and you have the right cancer, they will treat you for free. It is quite an enterprise. But it's important to note that there are only 15,000 kids in America who have cancer, and there are 17 million who have a mental health disorder. That means everyone listening knows and loves one of these children because it's 1 out of 5. So if it's not your son or daughter, it's your niece or nephew, or it's your best friend from college's kid, or it's your kid's best friend. The most common set of disorders for childhood and adolescence are mental health disorders. We thought that we should establish an independent nonprofit that would, work with everyone, but wouldn't be owned by someone. It turns out that one of the most important things we do is public awareness and public education. So childmind.org is a website that's had 58 million visitors and gets about 1.6 million unique visitors every month. And it gives you scientifically sound information on parenting when you're worried about your kid's behavior, emotions, or learning. We really see ourselves as doing, transforming the lives of these children and hopefully waking up America to recognize how real, common, and treatable mental health disorders. And the Scaffold Effect, this book, basically comes out of the work we've been doing at the Child Mind Institute because it's so essential to work with parents, especially when a kid is having difficulty. I mean, for most of us, I'm sorry to say, and some of my vignettes of my parenting are in the book. It basically is don't do this at home. But we're able to do things and not be as timely or efficient And yet when you have extraordinary kids or kids with extraordinary needs, you have to be better than average. You really do have to scaffold your kids. You really have to be the type of parent that gives them, structure and support and encouragement.
And having Amy and I both having spent some quality time on the site before we ever knew we would be interviewing you, it's not just for kids who are on what people might describe as the severe end of a spectrum of this stuff. There's useful information for all parents on this site.
Yeah, when I was writing the book, and actually when I read the book out loud for Audible, I kept thinking to myself, why wasn't I this smart when I was a parent? So, and I keep thinking, by the way, thank God my wife was. Do you know what I mean? And I think the way to think about this is that, we are building a building. Being a parent, I think I tell my oldest son all the time on his birthday, best day of my life, really loved getting married. But the thing that transformed my life was the day I became a father. I distinctly remember the feeling of, holding him in the delivery room, looking at him, being amazed at how much he looked like my mother and my father-in-law, and just the joy of, it just leveled me in a way of saying, this is now what's really important. And it's not that when I had my second son and my third son, it was different, but it was transformative when you became a parent. And I think that, it's a big and very important role. There is no license to become a parent. And yet, I think we have to think carefully that, the child is a building. And while the child is developing, it's our role to scaffold them, to help support them as they're going up. Now, it also means, by the way, that we have to accept what the building is going to look like.
That's the hard part.
Yeah, I want a skyscraper and my kid's a ranch. But I think that there's some simple pillars that we have to think about, on a regular basis, that it's our job to provide structure. And particularly now with COVID, it's even more so, establish routines, house rules, ways of thinking, clear communication style. We need to be supportive. We have to have emotional empathy, and we have to validate our kids, and we have to encourage them. So those are the three most important things we have to do. And we have to think about that a lot. And when we talk about support, there's no teasing. This is a one-way street. We shouldn't tease our kids. We should be supportive of our kids. That doesn't mean that we should exaggerate their assets and minimize their deficits. It means we have to be realistic, but we have to be supportive. And then there are planks that we think about the scaffold, right? There are pillars and then there are planks on it. And we have to be patient, which is sometimes very, very challenging. And you have to have warmth and awareness. And there has to be a certain amount of dispassion. Remember, I said, it might not be a skyscraper, even though you're a skyscraper. You have to be dispassionate. You have to stay calm, no matter how upset you are. My oldest son was 8 years old, and he went to sleepaway camp. So off he went, and we went up there on visiting day, and he just looked at us, and he hugged us a little too hard. And I said, what's the matter? He said, I want to go home. So we walked into the woods to have a conversation. And he turned to me and he said, there's no one here to love me. I was so overwhelmed that my eyes got wet. Oh. And my son said to me, Josh said to me, Dad, don't cry. It's okay to be upset, but not when your kid is upset. When your kid's upset, that's when you have to be dispassionate. That's a mistake, right? You don't want him to take care of you. You want to take care of him. And so inevitably we do make errors. But if we could go back and learn from those errors so that you think to yourself, okay, I am patient. I am definitely, maybe overly warm parent and I'm aware, but I need to do some work on dispassion. I don't want to overwhelm parents. I think parents are working so hard now. They're not only inside the house, which was already difficult, but they're a tutor, they're a teaching assistant, they're a playmate. There's so much more, and they're overwhelmed themselves.
Exactly. We have to remain dispassionate about the strife that is all around us right now.
Correct. And also to be able to describe it to our kids in developmentally appropriate language. But I think the first thing that everyone has to do, especially now with COVID, but on a good day in America, is that you have to secure yourself first. I remember thinking every time I was on an airplane and the flight attendant said, when the air pressure goes down and the masks come down, please put it on yourself first and then put it on your child. And I thought, oh, that sounds so wrong. Of course I'd put it on my child. But that's not right, because if you put it on your child and then you get lightheaded, you won't put it on yourself. Or if you don't put it on yourself, you can't take care of child number 1, 2, and 3. I think self-care is overlooked because parents think they should put their kids first. But this is a time where there's got to be a checklist, right? I have to exercise. I have to sleep. I have to eat some green food. I have to have some affection in my life. There is meditation or alone time. I mean, there's so many things that we have to do to keep ourselves well. And therefore, we can then take care of our kids. And it's, again, the same plank, scale back to a doable schedule, slow down and take breaks. That's the patience. Be warm to yourself. Remember that, just like me, I'm an imperfect human being. I shouldn't have gotten weepy, when my kid was upset. That doesn't make him feel better. It's kind of interesting. My son has said, I don't really remember that, and so I'm thinking I'm tortured.
Always.
I am tortured. The other thing that, about being dispassionate, how about when your child has a fight with some other child and the other child is really mean to your child, right? I'm ready to take a contract out on that child.
So you're saying that's not correct, though?
No, it's not correct. And on top of that, 2 weeks later, your kid is playing with that child and you keep saying, what are you doing? We don't like that child.
You're like, don't get near that monster.
And that's being dispassionate, right? That doesn't help your child to take up his battle and to hold and tell him to hold on to a grudge or to be insulted for him. So I think it's the kind of book that you read and you go back to and you take these steps of saying, okay, if things aren't going well, we'll draw a new blueprint. I think about this concept of scaffolding very much even when your kid's in trouble and you have to go to a mental health professional. You have to accept that something is wrong, right? And great parents recognize their kids' deficits and recognize they need a scaffold, right? But the important part is that you can't just be so overwhelmed that you go to the first therapist that your pediatrician recommended and you're too passive. You don't ask them, how many times have you built a kitchen? How long will this take? How much will it cost? And when they tell you, oh, I only do bathrooms or I only do, skyscrapers, you have to say, well, thank you. I have to go to someone else because my kid has an attention problem and I need someone who knows how to take care of kids with attention difficulties, behavior problems, not someone who tells me, oh, I don't know how long this is going to take and we're going to just play it by ear. A parent has to say, I have to know that the scaffolding I'm putting up is strong and that it's going to be helpful to my child.
Right. And I think there's a starting place issue there. And we're going to talk about that after this break.
For some of us, tax season is one of the only times that we look at our finances fully. And once it's over, well, that was terrible. And it is completely understandable not to want to think about it for another whole year. But using Monarch and being intentional with your finances in an ongoing way helps you see where your money is going and how you can put your refund to best use.
We are here to tell you, simplify your finances with Monarch. Monarch is the all-in-one personal finance tool designed to make your life easier. It brings your entire financial life, budgeting, accounts and investments, net worth, and future planning together in one dashboard on your phone or laptop.
Feel aware and in control of your finances this tax season and get 50% off your Monarch subscription with code FRESH.
As you know, my husband and I are preparing to send, 3 kids off to college, and I cannot tell you how helpful Monarch has been in showing us our full financial picture, helping us to track our spending and reach important savings milestones. Our weekly meeting, Amy, it's now run by Monarch.
Love it. Achieve your financial goals for good with Monarch, the all-in-one tool that makes money management simple.
Use code FRESH at monarch.com for half off your first year. That's 50% off at monarch.com, code FRESH.
At DSW, we ask the important questions, like, what shoes are you going to wear? Whether you're prepping for wedding season, festival season, or just planning the ultimate vacay, the right shoes can make or break an RSVP. So own the moment. You've got big plans, and we've got just the shoes. At the perfect price, of course. Get ready to get ready with Designer Shoe Warehouse. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today and let us surprise you.
I find in talking with fellow moms and dads that this idea of scaffolding, you're not the architect, that I say often to our audience. I was quite surprised because I thought having a baby was like being given a lump of clay to mold into what I wanted it to be. And I genuinely remain surprised by how much it's much more like someone handed me a human being.
Right.
That has their own needs and wants and desires and challenges.
And who looks like you, who might look exactly like you.
Yeah. and reminds you and reminds you of people. But my idea that I am going to mold a child into anything is so fundamentally wrong. I think this metaphor of the scaffolding is really meaningful in that way, that you're not the builder. You're there. You're supporting.
Yeah, the DNA is, it's packed in already. But do you know that your lump of clay example is really what child rearing was thought about in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, even part of the 50s. Tabula rasa. It was a blank slate.
Exactly.
And, so it was nurture was everything. Nature was nothing. I have a sister who's 6 years younger than me and happens to be adopted. And my mother was a Holocaust survivor who was in law school before the war broke out. And then after the war, she got a graduate degree in social work. Mm-hmm. And she was convinced that she was going to mold my sister into a version of herself. And my sister was stubborn. And my mother and her would fight in nursery school over what shoes she would wear.
This sounds familiar to me based on my own story.
And, and my mother would force her to put the shoes on. And then she'd put her in the car to drive her to nursery school. And my sister would roll down the window and throw the shoes out on the highway. My mother was determined to build a skyscraper, and she needed to draw a new blueprint, and some of the ways we instinctively parent children aren't actually very effective.
Let's talk about that. What are some of the ways we get this wrong?
So negative tracking. So we really want to fix things, right? So we notice what's wrong. If you're always on kids about what they shouldn't do, you're not teaching them what they should do. Put your napkin on your lap. Please don't talk with your mouth full. All insignificant off-task behaviors that should be actively ignored. We also have something called confirmation bias. So we believe you're always right. You believe that you're right. So this creates negative, self-fulfilling prophecies for quote unquote bad children and causes anxiety in good children who struggle to live up to their hype. So if you can recognize that you're doing it, right? So how do you build a new blueprint? So first of all, the structure part of it is you notice all of your child's behaviors, not just the negative ones. And you aim, the sport is you aim for 3-to-1 ratio of positive versus negative feedback. Yeah, it's not easy. It really is. For a while, all my kids were living in a house out in the country with us during COVID. They're in their 30s. And I found myself sitting at the table thinking to myself, I can't believe they don't put their napkin on their lap. Or one of the kids does speak with his mouth full of food. And I was about to say something. I thought, the chicken is done. This is not effective. For me, instead, to compliment them on a funny story or for sharing some impressive insight or describing what they're doing with work and how they're managing to do it on screens makes a lot of sense. So if the only thing you take away from this is 3 positives for every 1 negative, and then last is encouragement. So you need to cheer on yourself as much as you cheer on your child. And that we forget to do.
What's an example of that?
Well, I would tell you that if you have been able to do the 3-for-1, and you've been monitoring it, and it's really important to monitor, because if you don't monitor, you really don't do it.
Right. You think you're doing it, but you're not.
Right.
Right.
At the end of the week, it's a good time to say, you know what? Someone has to pat me on the back. Don't say that to your child. Say that to your spouse or partner. I really did well. This turned out to be much harder than I expected. That's positive. It's positive reinforcement. It's a basic skill of behavioral therapy.
My kids' school has started sending home notes, and at the top of it, it says, I caught you being good. And that phrase sticks with me. Like, instead of the idea of the teacher is there to make sure that they yell at the bad kids, that there is this, and you get the note every couple of minutes. Like, I saw that you saw that your friend didn't have a pencil and you shared your pencil. And that phrase means something to me. I keep thinking of it with my own kids. I have 3 kids. It's a busy house. And often the reason we do this is because it's so much easier to only deal with okay, who left their shoes here? Rather than constantly, you have to work a little bit harder to catch them being good.
Yeah. In the book, I talk about catching your kid being good and labeling praise. So what is label praise? It means be very specific. Don't just say good job, because what you really want is to label praise in a way of effort. So, for instance, a child who really studies hard, and you watch and you see how much homework and how much preparation they've done for a test in a subject that's difficult for them, and they manage to get a C+ or a B-, that should be celebrated. Effort should be celebrated. Now, that's not, the flip side of that is, we celebrate everything. The kid came in 8th.
Right. Participation trophy.
Right. We are celebrating genuine effort. This was hard. There was a lot of practice. And you conquered that. You want to praise effort so that, the child who runs the race, the kid who really endures really should be praised. And that's the same for us. So that if you didn't do 3 for 1 the whole week, but you did 3 for 1 5 times during the week, that's, good. That's a great start.
Right. Catch yourself being good too, not just your kids.
Good. Right. And so if we think about those planks now, the planks should have an open plan. So if you're building a new blueprint, right, the patience is that it may take a while, but stick with it. Once the change is set in, once you start doing 3 for 1 positive comments, that will become the new normal. It's particularly easy for kids to change because their brains are much more fluid and almost mushy. And old people, people over 24, I hate to tell you that's old.
We accept that.
But when Hertz lets you rent a car, you're in trouble. It's kind of over. But, take one of your kids, put them in China, and come back 3 months later, the kid's speaking Mandarin. You put me in China by myself and I'll be doing sign language and eating a lot of rice because I won't figure out how to say chicken or fish. So I think you have to realize that it's harder for us to change our behavior, but it can become a new normal. And then the warmth is be the person your child can count on for kindness and compassion. If your child's counting on you for correction and for, sit up straight, put the napkin on, it loses everything. All of that wasted interaction instead of, boy, thank you so much for cleaning up today and for taking your plate into the kitchen. You have to catch them and label praise very specifically. And then awareness. Ask yourself, am I only seeing what's wrong or am I focusing always and always being right? I mean, parents, look, we can be right compared to our kids. We're more verbal. It's an unfair fight and it doesn't win anything. Winning that fight doesn't gain anything.
Can I ask a question about the blueprint?
Sure.
Because I understand in this metaphor that child is the building and that we're the scaffolding and that we're not in control of what shape the building takes. The scaffolding supports the shape. It doesn't control the shape, but the blueprint kind of does. And so I'm thinking right now if I have a child who's going off to college in the fall and my spouse and I are talking about do you steer him towards a certain major or do you let the kid, sample and try and fail and do whatever they want? We have differing points of view on that. But when my child sets down to do sort of a blueprint of their college years and what they want to accomplish, am I the pen? Am I the sitting at the desk with him? Am I the paper? What is my function?
We love extending a metaphor.
No, but let's think about that. But just remember what we were talking about. We always go back to structure, support, and encouragement. So the structure is that once your child's in school, it might be very helpful to say, have you looked over, the courses? Do you have any idea? Would you like some assistance? Or I'd enjoy looking at this with you. And if they say, no, I got it under control, you have to step back. But then it's again being supportive and saying, I'm really impressed with the way you're handling this. But he knows or she knows that they can come to you if it starts to fall apart. I think most kids, particularly when they go to college, want to continue having the structure and support and encouragement of their parents. But I think you have to back off,
Let's take a break. When we come back, I want to talk more about what happens when your child's building doesn't turn out like you thought it would and how you deal with your own feelings as a parent about that. All my kids learned to swim when they were little. It was super important to me that they be confident and safe in the water. There was only one problem with that. Taking them to swim lessons. I mean, the pools were freezing. There were always cranky adults doing laps right there. And it was definitely not, for any of us, what you would call fun.
Amy, heard. But now there's Goldfish Swim School. Goldfish takes a really thoughtful approach to swim lessons, combining research-based teaching with a warm, kid-friendly environment that actually helps kids thrive in the water.
Every detail at Goldfish is thoughtfully designed to create a golden experience, from shiver-free, warm indoor pools to comfy waiting areas for parents to professionally trained lifeguards on deck.
Goldfish uses an approach called the science of swim play, which combines guided play with proven teaching techniques to help kids learn to swim, build water safety skills, and gain confidence all at their own pace. Lessons are designed to meet kids exactly where they're at.
If you've been thinking about swim lessons or just wondering where to start, this is a great opportunity. Right now, Goldfish Swim School is offering a waived membership plus your child's first lesson free at participating locations.
Just visit goldfishswimschool.com/free to find a location near you and enroll using promo code free.
That's goldfishswimschool.com/free, promo code free.
Amy, when I'm having a good hair day, it usually makes my whole day better. And that's why on every day, I'm taking Nutrafol.
Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist-recommended hair growth supplement brand. And it's the #1 hair growth supplement brand personally used by dermatologists. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are peer-reviewed, NSF certified for sport, and clinically tested.
Nutrafol offers multiple formulas for men and women tailored to different life stages and lifestyle factors, so you get support that's actually right for you. Adding Nutrafol to your daily routine is easy. Order online, no prescription needed, with automated deliveries and free shipping to keep you on track.
Let your hair be one less thing to worry about. See visibly thicker, stronger, faster-growing hair in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol.
For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you visit Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LAUGHING.
That's Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com, promo code LAUGHING. Harold, I love in this book that you say that we need to accept our child's building for what it is, even if it seems strange to us, because when it's all done, our child will live in it and we won't.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that because what happens when you see your kid making decisions? I don't mean dangerous decisions. I mean, I don't know, like majoring in making God's eyes out of yarn when you think they should be majoring in history.
No, but it could be even more subtle than that, And I think it's, the nice part is that you have 18 years while you're watching what your kid's passions are. You want your kid to have passion and you want your kid to have real, genuine interests. And again, you do have to want to go back and say, I'm going to give structure, I'm going to be supportive, and I'm going to be encouraging, even though this is not coming out the way I thought it would. So I'll use myself again. My oldest son is socially reticent. It was certainly surprising that in high school and then in college that he got passionate about being a DJ. A DJ, okay? Someone who stands up there.
I have a DJ kid too.
And it certainly wasn't what I thought of. Do you mean he was a great science student? I didn't understand why he didn't want to go to medical school. But, it was his path, right?
Yes.
And he was taking charge. He was taking over the blueprint, so to speak. And he said, no, I'm going to try this for 2 years. That son runs a private equity firm today. And if you would have told me, I wanted a doctor, right? I wanted someone to talk to about medicine. And then he made me convinced that we were getting a DJ, and he changed directions. The ranch turned into, a McMansion or into a split level. I'm not sure what it is. And at a certain point, we have to go back to, okay, I'm going to give structure. I'm going to give support. I'm going to be encouraging. I'm going to try to be patient, and I'm always warm and awareness, and I'll try to be dispassionate. The dispassionate is very difficult for a lot of dads. It's like, what the hell are you doing?
Yes.
Do you mean it's like, that's your inside voice for your head, not for inside your head, not for coming out of your mouth. So.
Let's talk about that a little bit for ages and stages. How do you talk about this with, a lot of our audience has 4, 5, 6-year-olds. It feels like there's a lot more things you do have to say to a 4-year-old. I'm in charge. I know best. And you're not going to lick the light bulb over there.
Right. And so, again, the way you structure a little kid, I have a very young grandson. He's only a little bit more than 2. And I watch, his parents, they're just naturals at this. But there's this attitude of course, there's certain things he can do and there's certain things he can't do.
Right.
There is structure. They are really strict about what time he goes to sleep and when activities die down and why sleep is really important. And they're pretty strict, in my opinion, about food, too, that he seems to have a really balanced diet. Now, there's no doubt he still has a sweet tooth, but there seems to be the idea of, okay, structure, support and encouragement. And I think it's much easier. I think it's much easier to do for little kids than it is for school age kids. I think it starts to become more difficult when kids are age 7 and parents can begin to shift from just being fixers to consultants.
And you don't have as much control.
Yeah, you can remember in our DNA, we were talking about, I don't want parents to become concierge parents. I want them to be scaffolding parents. That's very different.
And what's the difference?
Well, a concierge parent says, let me fix this paper. Let me get you a better table in the restaurant. Let me even get you into college with the varsity blues. Let me manage your life. And if you're unhappy or uncomfortable, Just tell me about it. I will get rid of the discomfort.
People sometimes say snowplow. It's like you're getting everything out of the path. There's no conflict.
Right. And the concierge, I think, is even more specific. With the scaffold, we're putting up a scaffold that's going to give this kid a tremendous opportunity to play the piano and to express his musical gifts. But at the same time, he has to do it. So you can't sit down at the piano and play the concerto for him. And so I think that, to empower growth, we have a comfort zone and we have a growth zone, and then we have a danger zone. And so, of course, all of us, in our comfort zone, we're very proficient with what we're doing and we feel secure. And when we turn 7 or 6, second grade, first grade, we're able to start encouraging our kids to get out of their comfort zone, to learn new things, which means that, they have to leave the comfort zone and go into that growth zone. If we push them too far, if we put them into a danger zone, they shut down, right? If you ask a kid to participate in an activity that's way over their head, they're going to feel frustrated. They're going to feel like failures. They're not going to want to do it. So that's what I mean by a consultant. All of a sudden, we're not a fixer, we're a consultant. And that really works for most kids.
And does this apply even to kids who aren't neurotypical, who are crippled by anxiety? I mean, some of the examples we've been talking about are kids who sound like they are extremely confident. How do we provide scaffolding when our kids need more support than the typical kid?
Well, I think if anything, the pillars and the planks become more important, right?
Right.
So we have kids at the Child Mind Institute who are selectively mute. In fact, we treat more kids with selective mutism than anybody else in the world. It's a variant of social anxiety disorder. So for all your listeners, what does social anxiety feel like? The next time you go to a cocktail party with your partner or your spouse and you don't know anyone and you walk in and say, oh my God, I don't have anything to say. Who's going to talk to me? And you make a beeline for a bar. That's a socially anxious moment. If you exponentially exaggerate that, social anxiety disorder occurs. So a kid will, not raise their hand in school because they don't want to look foolish, and it's better to be silent than to be wrong. Kids who have a more severe case of social anxiety disorder literally do not speak. They talk to mom and dad, they might talk to a friend, but they don't talk to anybody else. And the way we treat that is with exposure response prevention. We put them in a classroom, a simulated classroom, and we let them get success with either shaking their head yes or no. We then take them to pointing their answers out on a sheet, and they get labeled praise. And by the end of 5 days, they are ordering ice cream from a stranger. And we're videotaping this so the parents won't believe it unless we show it to them. And that is exactly what we're supposed to do with any child, with getting professional help, obviously, but the parents become part of the journey. You need to be better than average parents when your kid is struggling. So, a mild case of this, of social reticence, poor Joshua, he was my first child, he was very shy. And so we would work on how do you shake hands? It's like a puzzle, and you look someone in the eye and you look at them long enough in the eye to tell us what color their irises were. And you learn how to ask you questions, because just think how much helpful this would be at the next dinner party you go to. Ask 3 you questions to your right and 3 you questions to your left. Where did you go to school? Where did you get that beautiful blouse? Where do you live? People like to talk about themselves, but not everyone naturally knows that. And so wouldn't that be a good idea to be able to, again, use that structure and that encouragement and give those skills? Not everyone has the same tools in their toolbox. I have to tell you, we're challenged more than ever now because we're so on top of each other.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I can't imagine, I would love to have dinner with my kids, every other Sunday. Having dinner with my children every night, this is a challenge. And
Doctor, it's not great. I'm not going to lie. Your instincts are right on there. It's kind of challenging.
Right. So therefore, I am a very optimistic person, but I think that there are opportunities that we have to handle properly because of COVID. I think that parents have to use that, let's have a routine. Let's get up every morning at the same time. Let's have normal, hygiene. Let's all brush our teeth. Let's eat breakfast together. And if we can't eat breakfast together, let's make sure we eat dinner together. Let's provide that routine and structure for our children, that Wednesday is pizza night, that every Friday is going to be a movie night. I think if ever there was a need for pillars and planks, it's right now. And one has to also understand that self-care moment where if you're losing it, you say to your kid, you model and say, you know what, I need a break. I'm going to go to my room. I'm going to do some mindfulness. I'm going to call my mom. I'm going to read a book of poetry or a novel for a while. I got to escape and then come back and say, I feel so much better. Or I went to take a walk. Listen, when I wrote the book, I wasn't thinking of COVID.
Right.
But if there was ever a stressor that needs a structure for parents, and I think that's really what this is, a way of thinking in the same way that we could Ferberize our kids so that they could sleep through the night. There has to be a style of parenting that we can rely on and we could turn to when we think, my blueprint's not working, or this technique is somehow I'm being very negative all the time. My interaction with my child is really unpleasant. How do I reset?
This book is perfect for that moment.
Yes. And in that vein, tell our audience where they can find you, where they can find the book, and start bringing this practice into their lives.
The book is available everywhere on Amazon and at your favorite independent bookstore. And on top of that, you can go to childmind.org and you can order the book through the Child Mind Institute. It's important to note that all of the author proceeds are going to the Child Mind Institute, which is an independent nonprofit.
Fantastic.
And uses our money to expand our research and offer financial aid. And you can also go to our Facebook page where there are many different talks about the scaffold effect, which we're going to be doing on Instagram and on Facebook Lives.
The book is called The Scaffold Effect, Raising Resilient, Self-Reliant, and Secure Kids in an Age of Anxiety. Dr. Koplewicz, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thanks so much.
Oh, so much fun. Thank you for doing this.
Close your eyes. Focus. Listen to work getting done with Monday.com. Relax as AI does the manual work, while your teams are aligned on a single source of truth. Feel the sensation of an AI work platform, so flexible and intuitive, it feels like it was built just for you. Notice you're limitless. Now open your eyes, go to Monday.com, start for free, and finally, breathe.